beautiful Sunday morning out there.
Crisp and cool.
Nice. This is the Arizona prime time now, you know. Whew. So anyway, I'd like to give some thanks this morning for, you know, our lovely banter back and forth. So we'd like to start the service with a song called "This Is the Day," and if you'd please rise to join in it, to bring up the spirit, we'd greatly appreciate it. And welcome to the center.
This is the day that the Lord has made. I will rejoice and be glad in it. Sing that with me. This is the day that the Lord has made. I will rejoice and be glad in it. This is the day, a day to be seized, yeah. A day I can feel my spirit set free. Yes, this is the day. It's time to fly higher and high up in the sky. This is the day that the Lord has made. I will rejoice and be glad in it. This is the day that the Lord has made. I will rejoice and be glad in it. This is the day all my dreams come true. Can feel the Spirit working its way through. Yes, this is the day. It's time to fly higher and high up in the sky. This is the day that the Lord has made. I will rejoice and be glad in it. This is the day that the Lord has made. I will rejoice and be glad in it. Woo!
Good morning. Welcome to West Valley Center for Spiritual Living. My name is Reverend Clyde Goings. I'm the assistant minister here. I want to welcome you here on this beautiful Sunday morning. Our beautiful Sunday mornings are coming, and we're going to be experiencing them a lot lately. Before I get started with my announcements, I would like Kay to come up and talk about the ceremony of remembrance.
Thank you. Good morning. I just want to remind everybody that on December 1st, I'm going to be conducting a ceremony of remembrance for our loved ones who have passed away or transitioned. And this Thursday, November 21st, I had to look. I would like to have all the pictures in. If you would like your loved one to be in a video for the ceremony, please either send me at the office email, or you can give me hard copies of photos that I can scan by this Thursday so that I can put them in a music video. Okay? Thank you. Oops, sorry.
Thanks, Kay. I just want to clarify, it's also for pets as well, correct? Yeah, so you can, if you have pets that you want to celebrate with this beautiful ceremony, please bring in your pet pictures or send them to Kay. So thank you. All right, so a lot of stuff going on. So I want to remind everybody that today is our celebration, our family meeting and bowls of Thanksgiving potluck. So hopefully everybody brought in something. If you didn't, I'm sure we'll have plenty of food to eat in there, wonderful stuff to eat. So please join us. So please stay after service, enjoy the food, and then also participate in our family meeting, which is different than our business meeting. And if you want to know what that's all about, well, you have to come and find out. So please stay and join us for that wonderful experience after service today. Yeah. But I think business is fun, though. Anyways, all right. So next thing is Thanksgiving dinner. So we're gonna have Thanksgiving dinner here on Thursday, November 28th. The doors open at 12 noon, and so if you want to participate in our Thanksgiving dinner, if you want to come here and eat and join it with the celebration of our community, there's a sign-up sheet out there. Kathy Rose is and Phil are hosting it, and so. If you have any questions, you can reach out to them, but please join us on Thursday, November the 28th. Again, it opens at 12. Next thing, Christmas decorating. So Christmas is right around the corner. I know what's coming up. So on November 30th, which is a Saturday at 9 a.m., we're going to be decorating the center here. And so if you have time and would like to help us make this place festive, please join us on that Saturday morning. And you just have to show up, and we'll put you to work and help us decorate. It's not too bad. It's not too hard, and it's a lot of fun, and it makes the place look beautiful. So those are all of our announcements that we have and all the wonderful things going on. If you have any questions about what's going on, you can always go to our website, wvcsl.com, or you can fill out a card and get added to our newsletter and drop the card off in the, there's an orange card there on the home's base. You can drop it off in the contribution box or give it to Kay, and we'll get you added to our email distribution so you can keep up to date with all of the activities that we have going on. So if you notice my little cook hat, we're still in my apron here, and our giving tree, which looks really beautiful. And I'm almost thinking we might want to keep it through Christmas even, because the way it's turning out, it looks look. Kay, Reverend Karen's doing an incredible job of decorating it. Every week she's coming out with more stuff. So anyway, the reason why we have the beautiful tree and my beautiful outfit, I should say, is our theme. So our theme this year is Life is Sweet and Let It Rise. So we focus on our pledge program every year for the month of November. So the entire month of November, we're focusing on the pledge program, and that's when we ask for your financial support. So we are focusing on the recipe for success this year. It starts with what do you want to experience, then you pick the recipe, then you pick the best ingredients, and now we follow the recipe instructions and measure correctly, and it guarantees something delicious. So we teach spiritual principles every Sunday, and we experience the sweetness of life as we understand and we apply spiritual principles to our life. So the same way we use the recipe to experience something delicious or something new, we can choose what we want to experience in life. Our spiritual practice is like the following the instructions or measuring the ingredients, and then our faith continues to grow. So last week after service, I was talking to Robert, or actually Robert was talking to me. He came up to me and he goes, I understand the law of circulation and how it applies to my life, and I have a spiritual practice that keeps me in the flow of life. And so I asked him this week if he wouldn't mind coming up and sharing his story with you, because I think it's a beautiful story about how it works. So come on up, Robert.
Hi. Yes. So, hello, everyone. I'm Robert. I was discussing with him how I encountered. Well, let me give you a little backdrop. I was living on welfare, raising 3 kids by myself, and I had no money. And I had work, but it was just trickling in. And I didn't know how I was going to make this work. And a friend came up to me and gave me a cassette tape. Said, "Here, you might like this." And it was a recording of Edwin Gaines, who was speaking at Unity of Tucson, and she was bringing prosperity consciousness to the world. And I don't know if you'd heard that particular discussion she had, but I listened to that, and it made a lot of sense to me. And she was very big on tithing, and she said that just tithe 10% of wherever you receive your spiritual nourishment, and watch it grow. And so it's like, well, it was easy for me. I was only had to tithe like $5, because I had nothing, and losing $5 wasn't going to make that much of a difference. And so I started doing that, and also I started acting as if I was abundant, and being generous with whatever I had to be generous with, which was my time or my talent. And what I found out was, after, she said it would take like 6 months before you started to see any major changes, but like within 2 months, my income had increased tenfold. And I just said, hey, this seems to be working. And so I just kept doing it. And it got to the point where within a year, I had to, because I was I did it religiously. I tithed every 10% of whatever I got, and I would give it to the center where I was at, which is Southwest Miracle Center at that time, and I wrote my first $100 tithe check, and I was freaking out. Because it's like $100, I'm just giving it away, and how can I do that? But am I crazy? But I went ahead and I did it. I just trusted that this was the process, and if I wanted to be abundant, I had to behave in this particular, follow my truth, and so I did that. And the very next day, I got an unexpected check for like $110. So just like that, and it was like, whoa, and I finally started to connect the dots. And so if you think that tithing doesn't work, I would invite you to go ahead and try that and see for yourself if it works or not, because it's been working for me all my life since then, because why quit something when it's working for you, right? So thank you.
Oh, thank you, Robert. Yeah, so when he shared that story with me, I'm like, oh, I need you to tell that to everybody else, so you can see how it works. All right, so thanks again, Robert. So your yearly pledge is seeding our future for our spiritual home, and we ask for your continued support by completing a pledge card. So our goal this year is to collect 35 pledge cards, which totals amount of $75,000 or more. So we ask for your pledge amount once a year so we can budget and plan for 2025. We are good stewards of your contribution, and our spiritual home's recipe for success is your financial support to create a container to help us learn spiritual principles and experience loving support and allow life to rise. Because of your contributions and your support, we have a spiritual home to learn, to grow, and to deepen our connection with God. Our theme is Life is Sweet, Let It Rise, and we are focusing on a recipe for success. Our spiritual practices is how we learn to apply our spiritual practices is how we learn to apply spiritual principles to our life. Life can only do for us what life can do through us. So a couple weeks ago, we gifted everybody in the community, and if you didn't get one a couple weeks ago, we have some more left over, so let me know, we can get it to you. So we gifted everybody with this abundance book by John Randolph Price. And so next Sunday, I'm going to be, after service, I'm going to do an introduction. We're going to be doing a 40-day spiritual practice on abundance starting in January. And so next Sunday, we're just going to talk. I'm going to talk about what it's all entailed. Basically, it's a quick 30-minute dose of abundance affirmations, and that we'll do for 40 days to get us started for the year. So we have extra pledge cards here. If you forget to bring your pledge card in, we have pledge cards here that we can give to you. So you can bring them in. You can drop them off in the gold box at Home's Base. You can drop them off in the contribution boxes. You can give it to me, Reverend Karen. You can mail it in. There's many ways you can bring it in and give it to us. And so, okay, the cards are stacked right next to the gold box. You don't have to ask for them. They're already there. On the card, you can check auto tide if you're interested in setting up direct draft, and then I'll work with you on getting that set up. So I also want to remind you at any time that if during the year, if you choose that you need to increase your pledge or if you need to reduce your pledge, you just need to reach out to me and I'll work with you and we'll take care of that with no problems at all. So I also want to remind everybody online that your pledge amount is just as important to us. So if you're not coming into the center, you can always go to the website and click on Contact Us, and you can fill out your pledge information on that information. It'll come into the center, and then we can also receive that from you through our website. So when you turn in a pledge card, we will place a pot holder on our giving tree. So you can see we've got a couple of pot holders already on that tree, right? So they are multiplying. So are you ready to add your pot holder to our giving tree? So our goal is to collect 35 pledge cards with the amount of $75,000 or more total amount. So please join me in praying for the abundance of our spiritual home. So I want to close with a quote from Richard Bach. He is an American writer who writes numerous books on flight, like airplane flight or bird flights, and he uses the analogy to discuss spiritual principles. And he said, argue for your limitations, and they are yours. And so it is. All right, so that is our pledge program, and we are off. This is our third week, and we are ready to receive the pledge cards. So let's say our vision statement together as we move into the service. We are a loving, joy-filled community honoring the many paths to God as we learn and live the Science Mind principles. So just sit back, relax, open up your hearts and minds for the Bradford's beautiful music and Reverend Karen's wonderful message. Thank you.
So just take a deep breath as we move within.
I will make a quiet place within my heart, and I will wait upon the Lord. Wait upon the Lord.
Be still, my soul, be still. Be still, my soul, be still. Be still and know.
I will make a quiet place within my mind. I will wait upon the Lord. Wait upon the Lord.
Be still, my soul, be still. Be still, my soul, be still. Be still and know. I will make a quiet place within my life, and I will wait upon the Lord. Wait upon the Lord. I will make a quiet place.
Be still and know that God is right here in this place. God, that expression of love, peace, abundance, prosperity, joy, and wealth is all God right here, right now. God expressing in the trees and the plants and the buildings that we reside in. Everything from here to the outer limits of the universe, it's all God and everything in between. And knowing this, I know that each one of us are divine expressions of that God, that sweet spirit, in everything that we do and everything that we have and everything that we are. It is all God. And I speak a word of blessing for each one of us here, everyone online, and for all of those who cannot be with us. And knowing that each one of us is that divine expression. And for all of those in service today, I'm so grateful. And for the Bradfords, for their exquisite music that just brings joy to our hearts and souls as their harmony permeates our being. And for Reverend Karen, knowing that she speaks as the Word of God, that everything divinely flows through her to present us with a message that we are here to learn and to take with us. Because each one of us will bring home a piece of a divine nugget of information that will help us on our way. And with great gratitude, I release my words into the law, knowing that it is already done, and it is so. And together we say, and so it is. My reading today is Creating Affluence, Wealth Consciousness in the Field of All Possibilities by Deepak Chopra. And in this book, he has the A to Z steps to creating affluence. So I'm going to W. W stands for wealth consciousness without worries. Wealth consciousness implies absence of money worries. Truly wealthy people never worry about losing their money because they know that wherever money comes from, there is an inexhaustible supply of it. Once, when we were discussing a world peace project with my teacher, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, somebody asked him, "Where is all the money going to come from?" And he replied without hesitation, "From wherever it is at the moment." And so it is. Take a moment for that, for contemplation. And so it is.
I've got the world on a string, sitting on a rainbow, got the string around my finger. What a world, what a life, I am love. I've got the song that I sing, I can make the rain go anytime I move my finger. What a world, what a life, I am love. Life is a beautiful thing, as long as I hold the string. I'd be a silly so-and-so if I should ever let go. I've got the world on a string, sitting on a rainbow, got the string around my finger. What a world, what a life, I'm in love.
That was so fun. that had a little big band feel to it, or I'm not. Yeah, it was really fun. Well, she did it. You were just in the. Oh yeah, the big band. Okay, big band was great. I like the sound of that guitar. I am going to confess, when you were doing the Michael Gott thing, it sounded extra sweet today. I like it every day, but every Sunday. Good morning. Good morning and welcome to the West Valley Center for Spiritual Living. I am Reverend Karen Rice, and we are having our month of preparing for 2025. Your board of trustees always takes this month very serious. We already began the early phase of planning the budget. We're just waiting on your cards to come back to fill more potholders on our tree. We're really excited about it. And this week, as Reverend Clyde revealed, we're talking about measuring and mixing everything together. So we started with a recipe, and then we talked last week about the ingredients, and this week you'll notice I added all kinds of mixing and measuring, little tiny tidbits of things all over the tree that remind us that we're here to create something really wonderful for our upcoming year in 2025. So it's been fun having a giving tree, and I think it will be really easy to transition into Christmas. I think we just throw some red ribbons on it and call it a day, because I'm getting a little attached to it since I've been building it every week. Very exciting, and I've had help. People have been donating the items that we're putting up on the tree, and it just feels like feels like we're doing something important. And I think in part it's because of all the chaos in the world that we are sticking to business. This is the month of the year that we always do our stewardship program, Seeding Our Future, we call it. And we're getting down to business, which means when you're looking at the numbers, it's like mathematically things have to add up. Things have to be measured in such a way that we can plan for the upcoming year so we can be here for another year. And we are certainly blessed to have a mortgage-free building that our predecessors did a beautiful job in gifting us with that. And still we have a lot of expenses that allow us to do what we're doing. So you guys are doing great, and the giving tree has just made my heart feeling sort of overflowing with abundance and joy. And the title of my message this morning is Pressed Down and Overflowing. Pressed down and overflowing. There's a hint of that. Some biblical translations say running over, like there's so much pouring in that there's an excess. And so we're talking about the literal recipes and food preparation and those things in order to set up a mental equivalent of the way we spiritually nourish our lives and how we are creating a recipe for success, not only for our community, but it feels like we're doing an extra good job in the way we're inviting everybody to personally step up to. I love that we're following, instead of trying to do a book study now, Reverend Clyde so brilliantly brought back an old favorite, and we're going to do the 40 days in January, and it just makes so much sense to me that we're doing exactly what we need to be doing for now. When you're baking in the kitchen, you have to measure more precisely, don't you? They say that the best bakers are those who know you don't just make it up you don't just throw things together. If I'm making soup or stew, which by the way, I made some soup for you. I don't cook very often for us because I'm busy on Sunday morning doing other things, but I got some soup for you. And we have this beautiful idea that on the third Thursday of November, while we're doing this, it's kind of our family day. And so we have a meeting, but it's not a meeting as much as it is an opportunity for you to give us feedback, and we're going to feed you, and we're going to put it all together in a good way. So when I'm making soup and stew, some recipe cards suggest that you put in a pinch of this and a dash of that, or don't you love that one that says flavor to taste? then you really got to make it up on your own. But when I'm baking, if it says sift the flour, you better sift the flour because it changes how it measures it. And your scooper, your measuring cups, you dip it in the sifted flour, and then you take a butter knife or something flat and you scrape it so that you have an exact 1 cup full to the brim. Unless you're measuring brown sugar, then what do? You have to pack brown sugar, right? You get more of an idea of that. Pack it down and let it overflow, and it adds to the sweetness of what you're doing. So that statement, pressed down and overflowing, is taken from a scripture in the book of Luke, and it says, a good measure pressed down, shaken together, and running over will be poured into your lap. Reminds me of Robert's sharing. It just comes pouring into your life. For with the measure that you use, the way you measure yourself, it will be measured back to you. So there's a couple things happening here in this passage. We're talking about when it'll be the way you use your resources, the way we are generous in that cycle of giving and receiving, then that's the way, however we give is how it comes back to us. And it really is scientific. I love that it was like an experiment. I know when I was first starting to attend a New Thought church, and there is a consciousness around financial freedom. I remember there was a point in my giving and in a point where I was reading those books, as Robert was mentioning, and I started playing with upping my tithe, and now I would be devastated if I couldn't give what I give because it feels so important to me. It's so valuable. And I just read a leadership article for a church-wide, a more of a Christian leadership journal that I follow. And they said that actual tithing, the actual idea of a 10% tithe has dropped very low. However, the people that tithe are exactly like Robert. You never untithe once you get in the groove of that. And in fact, they gave a statistic, I don't recall it, but that the average person that has a philosophy of a 10% tithe gives well more than 10%. That it builds to where you're comfortable. And what I say is, I don't have any attachment to what percentage you do, but it does change your life when you play with it. But just increasing it even in little increments changed my life remarkably. The other thing that changed my life was when I wanted to become a licensed practitioner, and they said, oh, and by the way, you have to put your name on an envelope. I could no longer just put my few dollars in the plate when the plate came around. When I had to put my name to it, it suddenly seemed a lot more important to me. The value of it came. But with that increase in my ability to let it go, to give with joy, is where you get that essence of feeling the overflow, that just the pressed down and flowing beautifully, and then the good is returned to you, and it says here, poured into your lap. So what does that mean, to be poured into your lap? I used one of my Bible dictionaries to do a little research on it. I know you could Google, but when you got all these great books, you might as well use them sometimes. And what it explained was that during those days of when those passages were first sort of learned and sung in songs and memorized before they were even written, that the way that people would, first of all, shop, how you would accrue the food on your table, and the way that people dressed, that idea that it's poured into your lap made sense, because people typically dressed in long robes with an outer garment over it. So think of it like a long shirt. And so if you needed, let's say you had to get some grain, and grain is a staple in your food preparation in that day. If you went to the market, it would be an open market, maybe in the center of town somewhere. And you know, they still have open markets in many countries. That's still the primary way people shop, where they're handling the real product and it's not packaged and full of preservatives like ours is. But what would happen is, if you went to go buy grain, you could only buy as much grain as you could carry back with you. And the way they would carry the grain is by picking up that outer garment, think of it like a long shirt. They would pick it up. They're fully clothed underneath it, and they would hold it. So you pick up the bottom of your shirt and you hold it, and then the merchant would pour grain into, you can see how now we could say your lap. Pouring the grain right there into your lap, into the little basket you're making with your clothing. I picture my grandma. I can picture my grandma from Ohio, my Russian grandma who never spoke English. And then she was blind in her older years, so it was very interesting for me to try and communicate with her because I don't speak Russian. But Grandma would collect produce in the garden in her apron, because Grandma always had an apron on, right? Grandma always had an apron on. And she would take her apron that way and then pick produce and then bring it into the kitchen and clean it and prepare it for the family. Or maybe even eggs. Do you collect eggs with your apron? She has, Kathy has chickens, and she says she uses a little basket to collect her eggs. So yeah, I think there would be risk, and I bet you. Yes, I've heard that. My sister says the same thing. If you put the eggs in your pocket because there's only one or two, and you forgot to bring the basket, you happen to see an egg, but if you don't remember, and then you go to sit down, or yeah, that could be messy. So it was a different time, and so imagine you're holding up your garment like this, like a sack, and the merchant is pouring the grain in. At some point, the customer then shakes it so that it'll settle and it'll make room for more grain, and then a generous merchant would top it off until it overflowed, and that's where all of this makes sense when you understand how things were done in those days. According to the red letter, the idea that Jesus actually spoke these words, the message from Jesus was in knowing that as you give, so you receive. That as you measure out, so it is measured back to you. And he's talking about that law of circulation, or better put, we could call it the law of mental equivalence. And so there's that great line that we in New Thought, we repeated all the time, that it is done unto you as you believe. So it's measured out to you in exact proportions as the way you're imagining it, which is why Robert said, that's such a good story, Robert. You should be famous for telling that story. It has such a ring of, the more because he said he read the book, Edwene Gaines. I don't hear her name very often anymore. She's an old classic, right up there with Catherine Ponder, only a little more personal than Catherine Ponder, I think. But he not only read and studied, but he began to visualize or imagine what it would be like to have more money. And then I love that you took a risk. Yes, all of us have done that. All of us have done that before. It's like, it's a little close to payday. Can I really, And then you do it, and then always there's some gift in it in terms of our own personal growth. And that's what we're talking about today. Giving and receiving, knowing that the way you live your life is reflecting everything you believe. I love that Clyde used that quote about how we argue for our limitations. There's just this way we're living in this gorgeous universe that is designed to support us. And so our task is to participate in all that activity of circulation. Participate in our life, and then look for the way that life responds to you. Dr. Ernest Holmes, who is the founder of this teaching, The Science of Mind, had a slightly different way that I always think about when I think of all of these prosperity, the mental equivalence. When I think of all of that, I think of this illustration that Dr. Holmes used in the Science of Mind textbook in the chapter on mental equivalence. And Holmes said, he had this way of saying that if you, again, it's kind of outdated because it's 100 years old, but if you take a pint dipper to the well, the most water you can pull up is a pint. Right? If your dipper is only this big, then that's all that you can fill. And so then he says in the chapter there, he says, the law says that we can have only what we take. This is so applicable to everything we've been talking about all month, and really the teaching itself. We can only receive what we have the mental capacity to comprehend. And therein lies the purpose for a spiritual center or a church to have a service and a message every single Sunday. Because the idea is that we continue to grow and expand our ability to conceive of greater and greater good coming forward on this planet, not just in your pocketbook, but in this spiritual center and in our neighborhoods, in our country, and ultimately in the world, so that everybody benefits. Always trying to expand our mental capacity to comprehend these principles or spiritual laws. Holmes goes on to say this: we can have more. You want more than a pint? You can have more, but how do we get it? A pint dipper will never hold more than a pint. However, you might build up the edge and the rim of the dipper to make it hold more and more and more. So that's what we do as we're sitting here, or you're at home listening to this recorded message, or you're listening live. That's what we're doing. We're building up the sides of our consciousness as though it's a dipper, because we are a container. And the more we stretch our mind and open our minds and open our hearts to a bigger understanding, a different way of comprehending life on this planet, we begin to then align to these greater spiritual possibilities. These are really good ideas, and they are very simple and to the point. Increase the size of your container and what you understand, and your life will change. We can continuously, and we are continuously expanding our consciousness. And sometimes we do that in terms of negativity and the things we worry about. So we want to be conscious. Holmes said this. He said, we always increase the finite, but you cannot contract the infinite. And you can't make God smaller, right? You can increase what's finite, but you can never contract the infinite, because the infinite is infinite. And I love this idea, because I have often said in this very room, your God is too small, right? And you know why I can say that? Because my goal is that every single day I want to wake up and imagine the God that I understand and the God that I believe in is a little bit bigger than it was yesterday. Because my understanding should be a little bit deeper today than it was yesterday. If I'm doing my work and I'm committed to this idea of wisdom expanding, my heart, the love in my heart expanding, this is what we were created for. Yeah, amen. Amen, amen, I agree. Thank you. And thank you for agreement. Agreement is always so much better than somebody like scowling and arguing with me. And the other way we limit ourselves is by believing that the God-given gifts we have, that we are, the reason we're here, we think of our gifts as small. So along with imagining a greater sense of goodness in this universe, imagine that your gifts, whatever they might be, and remember we are highly individualized beings, that you do not limit the gifts that you bring. Allow your, like, just like that image of the dipper. I just see an old, I don't know why, somewhere in my life I must have had a metal dipper, and I imagine that I've worked it, like maybe it had a lip that was bent over, and I have this image in my brain of just like straightening that lip to make the dipper a little bit bigger. And it's what we're constantly doing in terms of growing in consciousness. So I really love all of this. The other biblical passage that I always think of when I'm looking at mental equivalence is that line again from the red-lettered words that of Jesus in the book of John. Jesus said, I have come that you might have life and that you might have it more abundantly. I have come that you might have life and you might have it more abundantly. And so if you look closely at that passage, what you begin to see is that there's a reference to all the things you have can be taken from you. A thief in the night can come and rob you. But the things that are God-given cannot be taken from you. Now, most religions translate that in a very exacting way, as if they're baking and they're cutting the flour off at the top of the measuring cup, right? Most of us have been told that is about the life after you live in this finite body, the heavenly life. And in New Thought, we never suggest that. We suggest that there's a whole other way that we can look at the scriptures that have, if you've had Bible in your life, you can love those again, but you have to learn to look for the value in them from you. And if you've never been exposed to the Bible, well, yay, you don't have to get rid of any old weird Sunday school teacher stuff or nuns hitting you on the wrist with rulers. I've never been hit by a nun. But what a sad thought. So they pack a mean punch. I think of that, of what did the great teacher, this rabbi, Jesus was a rabbi who even as a child was dedicated to hanging out with the elders and learning spiritual things and studying the law and the way that they taught the law under what Moses put together and left for them, and was then modified until they had so many rules that they needed somebody like Jesus to come and go, enough already, too many rules, let's just start loving each other. And so I wonder, when I read a quote like that, whether it's symbolic or however you might interpret it, what would the great teacher who intuited his oneness with the Father Creator, what would he want us to know that we might have life more abundantly? How could we apply that? And so what I know is that there are things that money can't buy that we can all be grateful for. And then that brings me to this idea of gratitude, because when we teach gratitude, and by the way, every person that ever wrote a prosperity book speaks to this power of gratitude, that we must start with being grateful for what is. And we therefore begin to see that this month of November that is about Thanksgiving, and where we do stop and take time to notice what we're grateful for and be grateful for each other, there's an abundance associated with Thanksgiving that is a prolific meal and a symbol of prosperity, the horn of plenty, and the overflowing of that which is measured. The overflowing and the pressed down and overflowing. And then sometimes I hear ministers say this often, that gratitude is the anointing of increase. Because we understand the energy around it. It's that same thing we've been talking about all morning. So I enjoy thinking about it and sort of pretending that I could imagine why a scripture like this would be important, and how is it that at a woman my age, I was born a long time ago, why I could still be pondering the possibility of what else we could see in our understanding of these things. And what I believe is that it really is an invitation for us to know we can live our lives more abundantly. And even as I believe we need to have a greater concept of what God is every day, I believe we also can have a greater concept of what goodness in our life every day means and how that can grow immeasurably as well. One thing that I also notice is that when something big happens in my life or something big happens in the world, as we are moving through something big in this country, even now, I notice when big things happen, I can feel small. When big things happen and it involves the system or the government, then I can be tempted to feel powerless. And yet, in spite of everything that's going on, there is always no place where God is not. That God is right here, right now, wherever you are, and at every moment. And God is there as a power for good. And God is that infinite that never shrinks, it only expands. And so with that thought, then, everything changes. I can begin to see that the scriptures we've been talking about this morning, or the philosophical ideas of Ernest Holmes and all the other New Thought people we might quote on any given day, there's an invitation for us to learn to, continue to learn to be compassionate and be caring, to take those ways that the message of Jesus stepped away from the rigid religious rules and into this idea of, we can love each other. You know, the Jews and the Gentiles, there's not one chosen people. We're all created in the image and likeness of the divine that created us. And so we want to practice forgiveness, and we want to experiment in our relationships, and we want to get over the ways that we feel separated so that we can then begin to find that oneness and that connection again in life through the practice of compassion and through looking less at the rigid, rule-based living into a more of a love-based acceptance where there's reverence and respect and we hold life holy. This moves us into a more expanded way or a larger understanding so that we can become the larger container. We can be building up the edges of our own selves as containers so that we can comprehend these greater truths that I believe, might be being revealed to us right now, and we should maybe pay attention as to how we can grow no matter where you are in the spectrum of change in the world, because I don't like all that technology myself. But if I go to sleep and I get too far behind, I'm not going to be able to catch up. So I have to do my daily work or find somebody else to help me with my smartphone that outsmarts me every time. Martin Luther King said something I wanted to mention. He said, "Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. Only love can counteract hatred." He said, "Hatred paralyzes and love releases." He said, "Hatred confuses and love harmonizes." Love helps bring us back together. So when we feel hate or contempt for anyone or anything, anytime you feel that just stuff inside of you that's like poison, it will cause us to feel small, because everything that looks scary to us will be like this exaggerated monster, and it serves no one to play small. It serves them. It is not humble to play small. when we stand firm in our spiritual truth and understand spiritual reality, we help everybody. Then it becomes a harmonizing impact in the way that we relate to each other, and life just flows more smoothly. Huston Smith, remember Huston Smith, is the great thinker who is well respected in terms of comparative religions. He had the first books that we all of us studied. Anybody that was heading towards seminary, he was one of the guys we studied in those days. And Huston Smith talks about these things. He says that when we find ourselves in an environment where people have different opinions, where people have different religious or spiritual differences, or when we bump into a world view that conflicts with our own belief. There's a good one for all of us to think about. When you bump into, you could be in the privacy of your own home, you still right now can bump into stuff. We can bump into some stuff where we disagree. When you bump into a worldview that conflicts with your own belief, especially if you feel passionate about it, those are the times I try and stay home. So I don't do any damage, where I know I'm going to have a strong opinion if I'm out and about. So I try, and I have a spiritual practice to help me manage those things. But Huston Smith is saying, when you bump into those conflicts or those differences, and you feel out of sorts, which is a real simple way of saying it, I think. It's not so strong as hatred. When you feel out of sorts, what happens is you also have a sense of feeling like you don't fit in. And so what's interesting to be me right now is that you are bringing stories to me about situations where you're out in public with people you don't know, and for some reason, because you're being kind, it's assumed that you voted the same way that person voted. And if you stay in that conversation long enough to figure out your opposites, now you have something difficult to deal with. And so I've been hearing this 2-3 times. I went, that's interesting. I keep hearing that same story. People are all having the same experience. How do you show up at your workplace? I'll tell you what, right in my living room, me and my husband, we had completely opposing political views. So I never had to leave home to bump into some passion there in those topics. God rest his soul. But I'm right. I'm still right, honey. When you bump into those conflicting views, now back to Huston Smith, he says this gorgeous thing. So it's like first you feel like you don't fit in, and that's what I'm hearing you say. That's what I'm hearing people say is like, and then I was having this conversation, and suddenly I didn't know what to say. I didn't fit in anymore. I was stuck. I was stumped. What I want to say is, when you feel that way, it's because we've gotten a little nervous and we have separated ourselves from the whole of what was possible in that conversation or that relationship with somebody that thinks a little different than we do. So now, Huston Smith says this: we must come to realize that we need more than one perspective on everything in our lives. We need more than one perspective, no matter how strongly we believe in any one idea. I'm not always sure how to handle that, but I can feel truth resonating as I'm speaking these words. I can feel there's something in me that knows there's truth here. And then he goes on to say, we live in an abundant universe with infinite ways to interpret life. And even as you interpret your own situations, when you change where you're standing just a little bit, you have a completely different view, right? Or if you turn all the way around and look at what's behind you, sometimes it's stunning to see that there's a whole world that we don't always recognize. I was here on, I want to say it was Thursday, and Kathy Bradford, what a beautiful voice you have. You are such a blessing. Thank you so much, Kathy. our musician, and her powerful band husband. And handsome sons. I'm just going to say, if you haven't been here in a while, those boys are men, and they are handsome men now, too. So Kathy and Hank, I think, showed up to drop off some stuff for our rummage sale. We have an upcoming sale, and oh my goodness, thank you for all the goodies you've been dropping off. It's going to be really beneficial for us. And we were here at the end of the day, and I want to say it was probably about 5:30 when I got in my car to leave. And as I was leaving, Kathy was getting in her car to leave, and we drove out of the parking lot at about the same time, which I wouldn't have noticed except you passed me a little bit. And we were driving. She's getting ready to get on the freeway, and I'm getting ready to go under the freeway to go home. And we're at a red light, and the moon was absolutely gorgeous. It was a rare, gorgeous, not that the moon doesn't do this on a regular basis. It does, but whether the conditions are favorable for us to appreciate it, but more important than that, where are you standing? That, you know, you could always see the moon. I have friends that will call me and remind me, go check out the moon. It's really beautiful right now. And I'm grateful for that. I'm sitting at a red light thinking, I'm so excited that I know she's looking at the moon too because it was so beautiful. I'm so grateful. It feels like we're sharing that, even though we weren't communicating, right? But there's that gorgeousness that happens because it's just life. But that moon was there while we were in this building working. That moon is there even if you're driving away from it and you don't see it in your rearview mirror. It's still there. Life is there for us to notice, and the blessings are prolific. Huston Smith concludes then in this conversation about conflicting world views. This is such a good quote. It's as if we look out and we cover one eye, then we lose our depth perception. Because with two eyes, you can see that you have better depth perception, and you can see if you're looking way out ahead, he says, there's a point of convergence. Do you ever do that kind of art drawing? I've seen people make those kinds of drawings, but I'm thinking of first time I visited Chicago and I was downtown, and you stand and you're looking blocks away at all these tall buildings, and with your depth perception, it looks like they're all coming together to a point when you look way ahead of you. So he says, you can see that with two eyes, you can see the point of convergence. You can see it way out there ahead where things cohere. And then everything becomes multidimensional. It's when we take time to have a broader perspective, when we're willing to open our mind and consider multiple views, other ways of perceiving life. Because in that depth perception, we find that connecting point. And that's what spiritual growth is about. That's what we mean when we're talking about spiritual deepening. There's a certain maturity that happens as we continue to expand our consciousness, and we see that life is always working for us, and that there is a point of convergence. A point where all things come together, where things connect, where we find coherence and harmony. And when we live like that, then our life is different. We're living our best life then. So we want to open our hearts. When we open our hearts, we're able to tap into a deeper wisdom, that divine wisdom, that seed of truth that's always there. And it stimulates the flow then of this abundant flow of love and caring and kindness. I was thinking about, it's just trying to find a way to wrap up this talk, and I thought to myself, for the last couple years, for about the last 5 years, and I went, well, it's been a decade. I'm going to say for the last decade, I think that we have, humanity, the human race on the planet, for the last decade, we have been cracked open. And there ain't no going back. We have been cracked open in such a way that we have work to do so that we can reconfigure how we stand and the way we connect with each other and how we can find that depth perception to see the connecting place of all of it. But I really think because we've been praying for peace for so long, longer than a decade for sure. I was in the 60s. We've all been wanting peace for a long time. But what I think is happening is that life is responding to that desire. Things have broken apart so that they can be reconfigured, so that it can come into that way. Jesus used to talk about a new system of things, or the new order, and the book of Matthew is full of it. A lot of the fatalistic religious people use those to prove it is the end of the world, and I'm saying it's the beginning. It's the end of all that old chaos, and yes, we're rattled right now, but it is because right now, and I want to say right now, maybe last Wednesday was the day, I don't know when, I don't think it matters, but right now, each and every one of us, if you are a human being and you are alive, you have been called to a brand new internship. I think everything shifted, and there are no winners or losers. I think everything shifted last week, and our internship is really an apprenticeship for compassion. Isn't that good? It is. We're here to be more compassionate with each other. And so what that means is it doesn't mean it's all hunky-dory and we're all just going to go off and kumbaya together. No, you're going to still be rattled, and you're still going to have to try and integrate what's happened, and we're going to have to, you know what I think the greatest gift of all is that we now, the more strongly you feel about the political situation, means the more you are going to have to practice forgiveness, because right now it feels like about half the country voted in a different way than you did, and for some people that's a hard pill to swallow. I don't think it's a hard pill. I think it's the greatest gift we could have been given, because those of us who are committed to a spiritual path will be practicing forgiveness, but not like in, oh, you did wrong and I'm going to forgive you. We're going to be practicing a holy forgiveness where I see that you disagree with me and I love you anyway. And I think we're up for it. I don't think we would be here if we were not the generation of people, including my children and my grandchildren and my great-grandchildren. Each of us has a different role to play, and I think we're going to do it spectacularly. And I really invite you to join me in believing that it is possible, that maybe this minister's right. So choose your recipe, find your recipe, nourish yourself, pick the best ingredients, because it's gonna take some of the best of what you've got to do that inner work. I believe that God, or the Creator, the infinite intelligence of the universe, whatever you want to call it, I believe that we as humanity are being expanded in consciousness, and that we are responsible for the size of our container and the shape of our container and the position we look out in, and only you can do your inner work. Remember, that was such a great beginning where it said, you have to comprehend it, whatever that great quote was. You have to, our mental, you can only receive what you have the mental capacity to comprehend. So let's learn to comprehend in a greater way. Let's expand ourselves as containers. Let's do the mixing and the stirring and the kneading. And remember how when you're making bread, you have to take a pause to let the bread rise. And I believe it is in that pause that we let God step in and do the divine work. We're not doing it all by ourselves. That's what I wanted to say today. Well, I really had more, but I'll stop. We're going to pray. So take a nice, deep, cleansing breath. And just feel the love of God occupying the space around you. and feel the love within you that is stimulated by these words of prayer. I feel that love within me. And I know that it is the activity of life itself. For we know that right where we are, God is. Right where we are, wherever that may be. There is no separation from this divine truth of our being. The DNA of God is in every cell of our body. The presence of God exists in all of our relationships. The magnitude of the divine presence is the healing element of every relationship, of every situation that feels like something's a little out of order. So we set aside our concerns or our fears, the things that we worry about. We set those things aside for a holy moment to recognize that grace of God, of Spirit within our own being. So we are reconnected to the whole in this moment. We are unified with that holy presence. We acknowledge that we are one with God and with life. And that as we groom ourselves and get involved in the shape of our container that is our consciousness, we realize that it is Spirit itself that is stretching us to new dimensions. That there is life desiring to creatively express through each and every one of us. So we begin by counting our blessings. We begin by knowing that there are things that are God-given that can never be taken from us. There is love. There is order in this universe. There is peace, genuine peace, even within us, a peace that passes our understanding. There is divine illumination. It is the light and the love and the truth of God and of all things that are pure and holy. And it is in this light that we find our way through the darkness. We have confidence that the morning comes every morning, every day. There is sunlight that follows the darkness. And so we gaze at the full moon, and it reminds us of the fullness of life that perhaps we have not been paying attention to. We get sidetracked by our issues, and I'm simply knowing that right now there is this flow of infinite wisdom that is coming to us and expressing through us, so that those things we have carried heavy in our hearts are healed. That there is a new way that truth is being redesigned so that we can see it and we can understand it, we can comprehend it from a higher perspective. For it is God that pours generously to the overflow, and it is only we in our finite human experience, it is only we that measure and expect precision. But in the freedom of life, we look about us and we see this abundance in nature and in this gorgeous universe. So I say thank you, God, for I know that this emphasis on the flow of life abundantly moving is the very success of this stewardship program here in the West Valley Center. So I'm grateful. I have joyous expectation for covering that tree with potholders, for knowing our future is secure, for knowing that we give as we receive and we receive as we give, and therefore there is nothing but this glorious movement of life circulating in a healthy way for the highest and the best outcome for all. So I say thank you, life. Thank you, infinite Spirit. How grateful I am. And I release the words of this prayer into that divine law, knowing indeed it is already done, and so it is.
Grateful, grateful, grateful for all the love that I have. I am so grateful, grateful, grateful for all the love that I have. Everywhere I look and every face I see is love reflected, shining back to me. I just give thanks for all these simple things, the joy and peace that gratitude brings. That's why I'm grateful, grateful, grateful for all the love that I have. I am so grateful, grateful, grateful for all the love that I have.
All right, thank you, Bradford. So I want to remind everybody again, please stay for our delicious potluck bowls of Thanksgiving after service today. And I can't remember if I made the announcement or not, but Kathy Rose would really get upset if I don't. That she's looking for the volunteers to show up on Monday around noon, so we can start getting prepared for the thrift our thrift store, our rummage sale. All right, so now is the time to celebrate the abundance of our lives and the abundance of our communities. So we do not pass around the offering plates. We have drop boxes in the back of the room, the contribution boxes. We also have one in the bookstore area. So let's say our giving affirmation together. I live in a consciousness of good. Divine love blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. Thank you, God, and so it is.
Please rise for our last song. Oh, it feels so good to be alive. Sing that with me. Oh, it feels so good to be alive. I ain't thinking about my problems. I'm living now. I'm living now. And I ain't gonna worry about the future. I'm living now. I'm living now. So put your hands up if you feel like having a good time. Put your hands up if you're sharing love with all. Raise your cup if you're hopeful for tomorrow. Put your hands up if you're ready to have some fun. And sing it. Oh, it feels so good to be alive. Oh, it feels so good to be alive. Feels good, don't it? Feels good, don't it? Only got one life, live in the moment. Feels good, don't it? Feels good, don't it? Only got one life, live in the moment. Feels good, don't it? Feels good, don't it? Only got one life, live in the moment. Feels good, don't it? Feels good, don't it? Only got one life, live. Oh, it feels so good to be alive. Oh, it feels so good to be alive. One more time. Oh, it feels so good to be alive. Woo.
Oh, yes. Tell me who sings that song again? Not you guys, but the real Megan Trainor. So I don't know if you guys have ever heard their version. Of course, our version is better. So, and I just want to say that I have some God power songs that I listen to, and I was that really get me going. And I was listening to them this morning, and I was like on fire when I got here. And so I really would like for you to record that because I want to add that to my collection because I love your version of it. Yes. So, anyways, all right. So now let's say our closing affirmation together so we can all celebrate and enjoy this wonderful food. So please say after me. I know I am loved and supported. And freely give of my talents and treasures. And so it is.